Welcome to a Football Show Friday edition here on the 440 Sports Network. I am Braden Gall. Of course, you can get to me on the internet at Braden Gall. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Good morning, Nick. How are you, sir?
Hello, hello. I'm here. I'm happy. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It was 3 straight days of actual football taking place on a football field. Players doing football things, sometimes wearing the jerseys that they're supposed to, and sometimes not. That was a fun trick. Brought to you, of course, by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Wiz Barbecue. We're going to talk about everything that we saw. We have some theories on the defense and where this unit should be, where it is, where it's going, how much progress has it made, how much progress can be expected. We're going to get into that. The leadership qualities of Cam Ward, of course, are the sort of the top level story coming out of, I would say, the entire program so far, whether it was minicamp, rookie minicamp, OTAs, and now official minicamp, sort of his ability to build people up, build a relationship, lead by example, lead with his words, and how people are responding to that leadership seems to be one of the top stories, if not the top story, coming out of camp this week. So we'll get into why that is, what the team is doing to sort of promote and support that, and why it's different than what, of course, they've done in the past. So we'll get into that. I think the most important play of the 3 days is not really being talked about as it pertains to Cam Ward. So I want to present that to you, Nick, and see if I'm out on left field on this one, or out on the third field is what I should say. Maybe instead of using a baseball analogy, I should use the Titans training camp analogy. So we're gonna cover that today. You're gonna hear from Bo Hardigree on his improvements, Cam Ward's improvements. You're gonna hear from Gunnar Helm and J.C. Latham on some of the leadership stuff, what makes him an effective communicator. As I am fascinated by the psychology of sports and coaching and leadership and locker rooms and personalities blending together. Clearly, Calvin Ridley gets along with Cam Ward. Clearly, they like each other, and that's a really big positive sign for the team. Sinkers Beverages, everybody. You got a weekend coming up. If you need a gift for a particular person in your life, I can't imagine who might need something this weekend. But dads, you know what I mean? If you need something for the father, Sinkers Beverages has got it for you. Great bottles of bourbon, really high-end stuff, really good prices, good allocation, always a great gift. Provide a nice, maybe it's just something they put on the shelf and show off and break out when there's a fancy occasion. Maybe they're like me, they like to sip on the brown water over the weekend. Good time to go pick up a nice bottle of liquor for the father in your life, or just like a friend or a dad or just somebody in your life. Go check them out. Yes, I'm dropping hints for my kids, Eddie. I don't know if like Sinkers wants them coming in to the store. Like, I know they're good. They want foot traffic, Nick, but I don't know if they want that kind of foot traffic at Sinkers Beverages. So serving the community for over 40 years, going to be a big party coming up. So there we go. All right. I want to start with the leadership stuff.
Okay.
And then we're going to get into the improvements, and then we're going to get into the play that I think that I really want to discuss, and we'll kind of go from there, get into the defense as well. But I wanted to start with just sort of what makes him good at this part of the game, which is bonding, locker room, teammates, personality, getting into it with Simmons, getting into it with other teammates, having people get his back. It is clearly sort of a different energy level. Now, I'll start with Jeffrey Simmons being at practice elevates everything just in general. Like him and Sweat and those guys just being there brings the energy level up. I think Cody Barton being on the team brings the energy level up in a very different way than that position provided in the last few years. So I think that's all part of the context that's important. When I say, hey, what makes him good at this? Cam Ward, what would be your response to that?
I think I'll distill it to something he said yesterday in his press conference that kind of made me think, oh, well, now that you put it that way, which was, I think it was a question I asked, but it could have been anybody. We're all asking the same kind of mentality, why are you the way you are type questions. And there's a point where Cam just goes, the coaches can't tell me where to throw, right? Like they call the play and then I play. And
his brain is on a different level sometimes.
That is just such an interesting reading of how football works. Of like, they designed the play and there are specific things you're supposed to do. Like, plays aren't just like, and then 4 guys go out and you figure it out. Like, the route concepts are designed to set somebody open or to get somebody free or to do all of these things. And the fact
Ideally.
And the fact that Cam's process is, well, they called a play, I'll figure it out. Some of that feels like, oh man, you should have a better plan than that. And some of it feels like that is some supreme confidence where he's just like, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. I'll get somebody open. I'll do what I can do. And how well that works in the NFL, maybe I'm reading way too into that. Maybe he's saying on like a metaphysical level, he has to execute the game plan and the coaches can't use a joystick to control him. But either way, when I think about what is so unique or special about the mentality, it's that. It's this idea that he's just like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm the only person who can throw the ball. So what are you going to do? Tell me not to throw the ball? I'm going to throw it.
Yeah. And I think every one of these parts of this conversation still always has to end with like a caveat of, well, it doesn't mean that they're going to find success. It doesn't mean he's going to be a great player. It doesn't mean that the team's going to win games. None of this means any of that stuff. But because what I find interesting is that right now it feels like it's based on personality, likability, work ethic, sort of the stuff you can base it off of. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going out there and making perfect plays all the time and carrying his team to victory, because there's no way for us to really know that.
Yeah.
Are you more likely to buy in to someone's style if you just like the person? Of course you are, right? Like, of course you're going to do that. So I think that all makes a lot of sense from like, again, not to joke about Ridley, but like Ridley clearly has a rapport with Cam off the field as well. It's clear that they have a rapport on the field. We talked about it last Thursday. I think this is going to be a really great season for Calvin Ridley. I don't know if that's partly his doing. I'm more focused. I'm more this. I'm more that. Is it I trust in this quarterback more? Maybe it's just I have a better relationship with this guy. But there's plenty of people in my life, Nick, that I have great relationships with. It doesn't mean that we're going to do like the best podcast together. You know, like it can't be based on success yet. But if it's based on all the other stuff, likability, personality, the respect he's gaining, I don't know what else you can prove to this point. Like, I don't know what else there is you could do to this point.
You're right. Sorry, I got distracted because there was a hedgehog outside, and I was trying to show it to my wife, and she missed it. And she missed it.
Oh my god! Dude, that's not a hedgehog. That's a groundhog.
Groundhog. Sorry. I could do two things at once, Braden. You're here too.
Look, I cannot call. You clearly cannot do what Cam Ward can do.
No. I clearly can't.
Cam Ward can talk shit to somebody and listen to Brian Callahan. And as my wife has told me many, many times, Nick, even though I think I'm doing two things at one time, the human brain does not.
No, I know I'm
and
not
you
doing
are
two
just
things
you
at once. I saw a groundhog, and I was like, that's going to delight a person who I care about more than Braden. So I'm going to divert my attention.
That hurts.
I just got the best picture.
That hurts. How about divert your attention after the show?
You think the groundhog's just going to sit in the yard for an hour? That's
text messages. Text messages. Use text messaging. Get out of here, Mrs. Suss. Get out of here.
I'm actually wearing headphones today. It's a rare occasion she can't hear you.
Squirrel.
Yeah, look, the Cam experience is going to be so interesting. And that's why every time I learn a breadcrumb about what relationship is being valued more, I get a little more intrigued. Like I talked to Lloyd Cushenberry this week. If you guys are at all curious about his rehab process and return story on the Tennessean. But one of the things that I talked to him about was, like, he kind of volunteered. He feels like he wasn't focused last year. He feels like the big contract and the move and all of the off the field stuff that comes with changing places in an NFL city for the first time, not like overwhelmed him, but definitely diminished his focus and took him out of the headspace that he was in 2023 that earned him this big contract with the Titans. And he's talking about doubling down on that old school perspective and trying to relearn the skills that got him to where he is. And a lot of that relates to how he is interacting with Cam, of how their lockers are next to each other and how they're putting in all this focus to build that relationship, even though they can't take snaps together on the field. And if you look at what the Titans are doing of putting Cam next to Cushenberry, putting Cam next to Ridley, giving him these opportunities to spend time with Callahan and Holtz and Hardegree, and, surrounding him, insulating him with, these are the people that you can trust. These are the people that you are going to need in order to do your best. I think that you do have a point where it's like, clearly these relationships really, really matter to what the Titans see in Cam. And Cam's taking advantage of them. He's building those relationships with the young receivers too, with those 5 a.m. meetings. It's very much centered on the dude has to be comfortable around everybody. And I don't know if that's a correction from last year, or I don't know if that's just a thing that Cam values. I've talked about it on the show before of when he got to Miami, one of the first things he did was ask for a binder with every single staffer's name and picture in it so he could know everybody off the field by name. This is a guy who really likes and values showing people that he cares about them. And if those things are coming back to him, makes sense. It makes sense that would be a priority.
Yeah, and maybe this is super common sense, but maybe this is where I go. It's like, that will only always take you so far. It's great. Sure. It's great. It's a wonderful thing that this is all happening. Everybody's got the feels and the vibes, and everybody's feeling great, and everybody's talking great and everything. But like, what happens in week 5 when you're 2-4? I guess it would be week 6 when you're 2-4, and math hard. Friday
It'd be
morning.
week 7 if we're being really pedantic.
And on Sunday of week 6. No, I think, like, I just don't know. Like, I think it's great. It is a great sign that this is all happening. It really does make him individually separate of all of the success or the team or like a fascinating human just in general. But it only will take you so far. Eventually, you still have to not roll right and throw back across your body into the end zone at a linebacker. Like, you still have to not make the mistake. You still have to be productive and successful. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be. It's just it will, like, I'm curious, like, what the force multiplier actually means at this stage. And it's a great first sign. And I think people should be excited about it. And again, it makes all of this stuff super interesting on like a different level. It's not a football level yet. And so I don't know if we saw anything this week. Like, it's almost like we've gotten away from, I don't know if that is going to work in the NFL. Like, we're not even analyzing the plays. We're not really analyzing the throws. We're so consumed with what's happening. And I think you can make the case that is still the most important part of this is comfortability, leadership, personalities, relationships. All that stuff is so important. It's not till training camp when you have to start like truly executing well. I guess is maybe what I'm getting at.
If you want analysis of the individual plays, may I direct you to Tennessean.com, where I did a lot of analysis of individual plays, of the good plays, the bad plays, the curious plays. The one that stands out to me as this is what the Cam Ward experience will be. And I know you have one of those too. I don't want to jump ahead if you want to show videos first.
Let's save it till after the break. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great proud sponsors here of the Football Show and 440 Sports, 2 great local companies. Make sure you support good local businesses. And of course, if you want to jump into the comments, we will take questions, of course. So as Jason and Eddie and Coach Wells, good to see all of you guys in the comments as well. Thumbs up, notifications turned on. Please share the show. If you are watching on Facebook or Twitter, please share the product. If you are watching on YouTube, thumbs up, give us a like, and share the product as well. It helps people find us. And we need to spread the gospel, according to Nick Suss, a little bit more here. So make sure everybody is aware of what he's saying and what he's doing. All right. Jason says, from the outside, do Ward's relationships seem distinctly different than Levis's from last season?
No, but the rhetoric around him is distinctly different. Is that fair to say?
I need to hear more, but I think I know where you're going. So go explain maybe a little further.
I think that there were no concerns from the inside, from my vantage point, about Will's leadership skills. It's a different leadership style, but I don't think anyone was like, nobody buys into this guy. People bought into Will. You guys remember the video of Jeffrey Simmons in that Falcons game. It took him like 3 quarters to be like, we got a future quarterback. People are going to buy in to success. And Will's problem was a lack of success. It wasn't a lack of personality that people gravitate towards. Will did an interview yesterday, and everybody came away saying, I like that guy. That's a good guy to talk to. He's a good guy to be around. Like, that's never been the problem. The differentiation is there was always this perception that Will's inner essence needed to be reined in, and Cam's inner essence needs to be accentuated. I think that if you listen to what Nick Holes's press conference said on Wednesday or whenever that was, there's a point where he said, yeah, we need a little bit of that fire. We want to see that fire from quarterback, when the entire message out of last year was about how do you rein in Will's fire. I don't think, like, Coach Wills is in the comments saying Cam is authentic and Will is cosplay. I disagree with that.
Yeah,
I
do
fundamentally
too.
disagree.
I don't think that's accurate. I think that, but it goes back to what I'm saying about success or failure on the field.
Yeah. So
it's still tied to that more than it's tied to anything else.
So, like, pull up Eddie's comment right here about recklessness. One of the things that's interesting to me is, for all of the talk about Will being reckless, Braden, how many risks did you see Will Levis take in practice last summer? Like, can you recall any points when he was testing something, when he was throwing across his body? His entire brain had been rewired to take the check down every time.
Yeah.
There wasn't this testing the water stuff, and then he made the mistakes in the games. And those mistakes were pressing mistakes. They weren't risk mistakes. Like, you can see them as risks, but they were guy who needs to go get a play, guy who needs to make a play, guy who feels like in this moment, I need to put the team on my back. They weren't, I'm a gunslinger, I can try what I want, mistakes. There is a difference between these two types of gamblers. And I hope I'm making myself clear. If you guys in the comments have no idea what I'm talking about, please tell me I'm a fool for describing this. But there is a fundamental difference between guy who takes risks because he feels his team needs him to, and guy who takes risks because he's not afraid to fail.
It's part of who he is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the authenticity that maybe we could talk about here. So I think you have to go back to 2 years ago with Levis, because I do think there is a difference between your first rookie camp, actually having a rookie camp, an OTA is your first mini camp. And again, Levis wasn't necessarily, he wasn't the starter. Like, he wasn't the guy he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. He wasn't the guy that was supposed to be taking the reps with the 1. He wasn't getting national conversation. All this stuff around Cam is just different. And I think, I don't the truth of the matter is so much stuff has happened since his first rookie camp that I almost don't remember. It feels like, and I think I saw this week out of Levis, there's just moments of it feels sloppy versus risky. And those are two different things as well. I think I agree with your fundamental difference between describing the two different types of risk taking, whereas Levis is pressing because he feels the urgency of the team. But I think I saw that more in the games.
Yeah, for sure.
All the time. Whereas, and you see this with Ward, it's very hard to describe. It's supreme confidence. I also think it's where he's played the game has allowed him to do that to some degree. Miami less so than Washington State, less so than Incarnate Word, and now less so in the NFL. And he's going to have to, as we've said from the beginning, you have to coach and train yourself to stop doing some of those things. Do I remember Will Levis last year in camp doing in the first practice what Cam Ward did with Jaquan Jackson when you and I were standing there 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, when he rolls right, he points at Jaquan Jackson to stop, throws it across his body, and almost completes the pass? Do I remember Levis doing a lot of that stuff? No, but I'm sure there were some moments where he rolled around and threw the ball maybe in a risky way. The question I think what you're trying to get at is, why did they do it? Why did each of them do that thing? And that is I agree that it's a fundamental difference, but it's a pretty subtle one.
It's a subtle one. You have to watch a lot of football. So let's simplify this to the absolute core of the conversation. If you asked me on Tuesday who made the best throw of the day, the answer was Will Levis.
Brendan Allen.
If you asked me on Wednesday who made the best throw of the day, Will Levis. If you asked me on Thursday, who made the best throw of the day, Will Levis. Now, if you asked me who made the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th best throws of the day, 5, 6, or 7 of those are going to be Cam Ward.
And
So
one Brandon Allen.
One Brandon Allen, one Tim Boyle. Like
Zero Tim Boyles.
There was one really nice Tim Boyle throw on Wednesday.
there was.
There was one really nice throw.
We all looked at each other. We're like, QB3 question mark?
That was a really nice throw. The talent there with Will is still obvious. And I will hand it to my colleague Gentry Estes here, who made the great point. Let's say Will Levis gets traded tomorrow. And let's say Will Levis goes out for a minicamp practice on any other team in America. Reporters who have never seen him practice before, reporters who have never seen him play before. How many of the headlines that day are, this guy's good enough to start?
All of them.
All of them. Like, he is a guy who the talent is obvious, and then something happens on game day that doesn't connect with what you're seeing in practice. Doesn't connect with the guy who is great in the film room and great on the sideline and great with the coaches and great with the teammates. There is just a disconnect there, or at least there was last year. I'm not going to paint that he will always be this guy. Whereas with Cam, what we're seeing right now is a guy who will openly say 7-on-7 is not real football. I don't care what happens during that. That's a significant chunk of practice. Like, if practice is like an hour and a half long and that's a 15-minute period, that's what, a sixth of practice that you're just like, not real. I don't care. There is a difference in this confidence and the way it manifests. And I like this from Cam. I'm not saying you should be like Will. I'm not saying you should be like Cam. Everybody should be individual. But yeah, if you're asking, somebody's asking, why do people think Will is fake? Why do people think Will is inauthentic? Look, whatever your first impression of somebody is the most likely impression to stick.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people had an immediate impression of Will Levis related to the mayonnaise stuff and related to the banana peel stuff from when he was in college.
Which he did on his own.
Yeah, he encouraged. Yeah. And related to the commercial salesmanship and the press tour he did last year of go on the off season and go to the Masters and go to this and that and the Kentucky Derby and have all the outfits. And like, there is a perception of Will that he is a brand more so than a quarterback. And nobody will ever mistake that perception with Cam Ward.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he's a guy who the entire discussion about him is, why is nobody talking about him? The entire national media, you turn on NFL Network, you turn on ESPN.
Except for Kyle Brandt. Kyle Brandt is on
but that's what I'm saying. Counterintuitively, the only thing people talk about with Cam Ward is we're not talking about Cam Ward. And the fact that I've heard Louis Riddick talking about how we're not talking about Cam Ward, and I've heard Kyle Brandt talking about how we're not talking about Cam, it seems like you're talking about him.
Yeah.
You're just talking about him in the sense of we should be talking about him more, which maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. I don't know.
So I talked about this with Cavendish on Lamestream Sports today, because I do interviews all over the, we do interviews all over the country. Most of mine are about college football, but occasionally people know that I cover the Titans. And so they always ask sort of like what's going on with Cam Ward. But the only story that has gotten into every other market. Now, we should not be surprised by the flow of information in 2025. But when I do radio in Houston, I do radio in Houston. I do radio in Florida. I do radio in Kansas City. I do radio in Knoxville every week. And the question I get asked is like, well, is there a real chance that Will Levis could take the starting job and they're splitting reps? And I'm like, that's not a story. It's not a real story. It's not a thing. It's not a real thing. Cam Ward is the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans right now today, probably 2 months ago, probably before the draft. He was the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. But the only story that has broken into other markets who are not on the ground covering the team is this one thing, this one line, this one tidbit of information about how they're kind of still splitting reps and like they haven't officially named him. And it's like, that's not a thing. Then, that's not real.
Even then, I watched every single rep of these last 3 days of minicamp. Splitting reps means Cam Ward got 50% of the reps and everybody else combined got 50%.
Right, exactly.
That's not splitting reps.
No.
That is dividing reps, which is what you do.
Yeah,
like there is no
in practice.
If you go to what's another team that has a young quarterback? If you go to New England right now.
How about the Cleveland Browns, all their quarterbacks?
If you go to New England right now, Vrabel isn't giving Drake May 100% of the quarterback reps.
No.
Like Josh Dobbs is there, and I would venture as he's getting
Yeah.
30-40% of the reps. Like that's just what happens. It's not splitting reps. It is a clever disguise
Yeah,
of
exactly.
splitting reps.
But it is an indictment of our information ecosystem that's the only thing that gets out. If you just pay attention for 5 seconds, you know that is not an actual thing that's happening. So Coach Wills is on a heater over here. Cam carries himself like he has nothing to lose. Will carries himself like he has everything can be taken from him tomorrow, which I think is interesting. More Coach Wills. Will seems like the guy who tries to fit in at the party versus Cam being the guy who is the party. There's another. Here's one. These are old references here. Coach Wills. One guy is doing keg stands to get the girls. The other guy's chilling in the corner with everybody around him. We're getting like progressively more.
I'll use a real life story. There was a period back in my life, College World Series week. I'll talk about college baseball when I used to cover LSU baseball, and I happened into a bar in Tigerland one night, and that's a huge regret. Never happened into a bar in Tigerland, but the entire LSU baseball team happened to be there. And let's say there's 20 players on the team. 19 of them are on the dance floor. 19 of them are happy. And one of them, the one who's expected to be the first round pick, the one who's the best hitter on the team, he's sitting in the chair that the guy who usually checks the IDs would be sitting in, just by the front door, shaking people's hands as they walk in. That is the kind of cool that Cam exudes. He's going to shake your hand as he walks in. He's not going to be with the crowd. Like he's got his own thing.
It's not the who was the quarterback in draft day? What was the name? Bo Callahan, where they're asking him like,
Sounds right.
how
I
many,
haven't seen the movie.
Who went to your birthday party? And like not a single teammate went to his birthday party. he's the opposite. Do y'all think Callahan will ever stop splitting reps with Cam? Again, we are in June. This is June. And so that's all I've got to say about that. How about we hear from his teammates real fast? Well, this was a little bit later than I expected to do. Good this, idea. But JC Latham and Gunnar Helm, these are all courtesy of JT Runke, so appreciate JT on the Hot Read podcast. I asked him, hey, let's grab some. I want to know sort of like from the other players' perspectives, we all know he's been a great communicator and he's building these relationships and he's got this kind of cool factor. The question is sort of like what makes it effective and good, and there's a few different threads here through all of this. And I think you'll kind of hear, but this is JC Latham on Cam Ward and why he's such a good leader in the huddle.
I think he holds himself to a leadership accountability. He'll admit when he's wrong and he'll take accountability, even if it's not 100% on him. But I think one thing that really speaks out about Cam, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Jeff likes to talk a lot of mess out there, and Cam is all for it and he's matching it. And then Jeff must have got a little close to him, and Cam headbutted Jeff. So it's like. Like as a quarterback, especially a rookie who, hasn't even played his first snap to, see Jeff as like top dog of the team, like, he's going right at him. He's not backing down. He's not like, oh, I'm just some quarterback. He's going right at him, the head of the snake. So, that's the type of quarterback he is. So, it's a pleasure playing with him.
So the word there that I appreciate the most is accountability. That's a word that will gain you respect in every walk of life when you take accountability for your own actions. Full stop. Doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing. And for a young player to do that and for another star on the team, first round pick to notice that, I think that's pretty important.
The second word I appreciate most is mess. I just like the phrase talk a lot of mess.
Yeah, I know.
It's a fun phrase.
It's a better, you can get away with it on radio, when you're an athlete doing interviews on radio. Here was Gunnar Helm on Cam Ward as well.
It speaks on, his ability, just really his character and his maturity. Being in an NFL huddle with some guys that have been here for a long time, some NFL vets, small pros, and having that composure to really break it down for everyone, make sure everybody knows what they're doing, make sure everybody knows the snap count, so we're all on the same page, so we can all make our calls and get on the same page. And it's been great. But like I said, just getting in with Cam, in the morning time before we actually get out on the field. Seeing how he wants the timing, where he wants us to be, where he's going to place the ball on certain plays, has helped our chemistry immensely.
So there are a lot of words in there that he used. He used character, he used maturity. I think the one that comes to mind for me, and he didn't say it, but it's what I gather, is preparedness. I think Cam, you could say a lot of things about everybody, but Cam Ward seems to be as prepared as humanly possible.
And there's also follow-through-edness, stick-to-itedness, whatever the good word for it.
Conviction, maybe?
Conviction, maybe. I asked Restrepo the other day what time his alarm is set for, Because I'm just curious, if you're getting at the building at 5 a.m., what time are you waking up? And the answer is 4:45. Like,
See,
to have
is he
the
staying next door or whatever?
they stay close by, but to
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
conviction to be like, it'll only take me 15 minutes to get out of bed and get to work.
In Nashville.
It takes me 15 minutes to get off Twitter, not to get out of bed. I was just like,
Oh.
I have a long process of like, let's get the mind right. Let's play the Wordle. Let's play my game of 2 dots. Let's watch a YouTube video. Let's scroll Twitter. Let's read the news. Like, there is a long, like, get into the day process. And these guys are just like, 4:45, I'll be there at 5. Let me brush my teeth and get in the car. Like,
you are not prepared for kids, my guy.
Oh, I don't do this because I have to. I do this because I can.
Yeah, right.
Like, adaptation is key to having something to adapt to. But yeah, I think that there is an impressiveness of these guys set a schedule and they really, really stick to it. And that's preparedness, but it's also follow through.
No, I agree. Let's see here. Ben says personality-wise, they seem like opposites, but the sentiment that keeps creeping up is that Cam makes the same on-the-field mistakes, risks as well. What will make the field results different? I think that's ultimately I think that's what we're getting at here. And this is ultimately the point, which is you can have accountability, you can have confidence, you can have character, you can have maturity, you can be overly prepared, you can have convictions in your beliefs. You can build enormously great relationships with the people around you. So much so that Calvin Ridley's posting ping pong videos, right? And it still doesn't mean you can read the blitz correctly. It still doesn't mean you're going to hit the outside fade on the back shoulder properly on 3rd and 10. It still doesn't mean you're going to do it all right and be great. It doesn't. It's got to translate. But at this stage of June, with a number 1 pick, who's a young player coming in, and I think this is Callahan's point all along about this, which is that he's played 50 games in college. He's played a ton of football.
Yeah.
Like, it's as good as you can get, though.
And let me try and put this in as close to plain English as I can do, because you guys know I speak around myself in circles a lot. I think the difference here, when you're talking about what is the difference between the on-field mistakes and risks, is that Will Levis makes mistakes and he really, really, really didn't want to make them. Cam Ward makes mistakes and doesn't really care.
And that's going to piss people off in the 3rd quarter of week 5 when it's like the 3rd interception. He doesn't look like he's upset about it, because even though it's a good. I agree with you. It's a good.
Here is the coda on the quote that went kind of viral yesterday. You guys probably saw the Cam Ward's asked what his confidence level is, and he says it's a 10.
Throw the coda out of a football.
Here's the coda. He was later asked, "Well, have you ever been at a 4? Have you ever been at a 5? Are you always at a 10?" And he says, and I quote, "I can come out in week 6 and throw 4 interceptions. I'm still going to be at a 10. And you guys, as fans, are going to find that infuriating. If you have a quarterback who throws 3 interceptions and then says, "Screw it, we ball," and heaves another one into double coverage later in that game, that's what Will was doing. But Will wasn't doing it because his confidence was at a 10. Will was doing it because he felt like I don't want to speak. Eddie's comments are right. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But it appeared that Will was doing it because he'd put his back against the wall and now felt indebted toward, fixing it.
Yeah.
Whereas Cam's doing it because he doesn't think he's created a problem.
Yeah. Yes, I think Ben says it right. Gripping the steering wheel too tight is the thing. But again, this is what we saw in Will Levis, in the first couple of games, which is he's got to you got to be a goldfish. And there's a balance in football where you got to know why you made the mistake. You got to correct why you made the mistake, but you got to be a goldfish and you got to put it behind you and you got to move on. And you can't let that affect the next play. Cam Ward is Leroy Jenkins.
Which is what we called Will Levis.
That's exactly what I think we did refer to him that at the beginning.
Definitely did, but it's the difference of, are you being Leroy Jenkins because you have to, or are you being Leroy Jenkins because you can?
Well, and Eddie says this. That's who I thought too. When you said, "No, I'm gonna screw it. I'm gonna heave it into double coverage again." Brett Favre is there's a lot of but Patrick Mahomes will do the same stuff. These quarterbacks that are immune to the risk because of their confidence, you do have to prove that you can make the good plays more often than the bad ones, and that does have to happen at some point. But again, we're in June, so we're trying to analyze Because you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about interception to this and touchdown to that and this play and that play, and we could talk about all this stuff, but it's really not as important as sort of what is building
And
inside the locker room.
I also think that Callahan is going to play a really interesting role in this because I'll use an example. I'm sorry that I talk about covering colleges a lot, but it is a lot of my experience. I remember there was a game when I was covering Ole Miss football, and Matt Corral in 2020, the COVID year, threw 6 interceptions in a loss to Arkansas. They had a proven SEC starter on the bench behind him. Not a super great one, but John Rice Plumlee was on the bench behind him. But dude who has stuck around as an NFL practice squad quarterback.
A really great running back and receiver
Yeah.
in the quarterback room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they didn't go to him. And this is not a blowout. It's a 7-10 point game. Ole Miss could conceivably come back. And not only does Kiffin keep Corral in after 4 interceptions, after 5 interceptions, he keeps throwing. He keeps pushing the ball downfield. And Kiffin's rationale about it was, if you tell somebody they're not your guy when they are at their lowest, you can't come back from that. You have to love somebody as much when they are failing as you do when they are thriving. And
maybe you are ready for parenting.
The psychology of Cam is going to do this. There are going to be times where Cam takes risks that are going to make Brian step out onto the field and say the same things he said to Will and got caught on the hot camera against the Jets. That is going to happen. When it happened in triplicate against Cincinnati, Callahan benched Will Levis. And there has not been any coming back from that. Now, when you're the number 1 pick, the standard is different. There will be coming back from it.
And I don't think this is giving anything away, but I think Callahan had made his decision up on Will Levis at that point.
It's entirely possible.
Prior to those throws and those mistakes, I think Callahan had already made his decision up.
It is entirely possible.
That is my opinion. Just my
opinion. I don't know if it was finalized, but I do think it's possible that it was trending that way. Nevertheless, the point I'm making is they're going to have to steer into the skid. Like, there are going to be times where Cam Ward thinks he's going to throw 4 interceptions.
Steer into the skid. That's like a kid who's played a lot of video games, racing video games. As soon as you start,
I am terrible at racing.
As soon as you start to drift, you got to turn the wheel the other way. I've had to do that, unfortunately, in real life a few times with water on the road. It reminds me of Nick Saban's mentality on his teams. Nick Saban was always the opposite. Whenever his teams were great, he was mad at them. Whenever his teams were bad, he was soft on them. That's it. And I always used to base my impression on how good I thought Alabama could be this year on how Nick Saban communicated in the preseason. If Nick Saban was communicating a lot of, I'm pissed at this and this is a problem and we're going to be bad at this, that means they were going to be really good. And if he was always like, oh, I just really love this team, it's just a great collection of guys, like, you know that they weren't mentally tough enough to be great. And so it's just he was always the master at that kind of stuff. So all right, I want to get into like what I thought was the most important play. But here's Bo Hardegree on Cam Ward showing the ability to take coaching, take his own mistakes, take the good and the bad, and show improvement.
First of all, just the timing and the rhythm of the passing offense. You know, developing his footwork, his timing with that. You know, that's been a big improvement. He's starting to feel his lower body connected with the timing of the passing concept. That's been big. You know, just operation out of the huddle. You know, things you got to do as an NFL quarterback when you break the huddle. That's improved. And defensive recognition. You know, and he works really hard on his own on a lot of that stuff too. And, you know, he's taking, you know, call it a correction or, you know, a coaching point, you know, and kind of, if he makes a mistake, never making the same mistake twice. And that's important to him.
All right, that's some of the stuff that he's talking about, improving and taking coaching. And so that is a setup for what I thought. Again, I did not see Thursday. So this is a caveat. I thought it was the best, most important throw of the first 2 days. I will say that. And you can jump in. So a lot was made of what I think was the very first interception he threw as a Tennessee Titan in practice, which was on the first day, I think it was.
To Cody Barton, yeah.
And what he does is David Martin Robinson is inline tight end on the left side of the formation. He runs basically a 5, 6, 7 yard quick out, whatever it was. Cam Ward takes his 3-step drop, but is locked in the entire time. right? He's locked in on the receiver. He stares him down. He throws it to his tight end. Cody Barton reads the play, reads the eyes, steps in front of the pass, takes it, runs. That's the start of the kind of energy trash talk of the entire week, the talking that mess. Cody Barton throws the ball at Cam, is talking and John and having a good time, and Cam's giving it back. And so I think there's one rep in between where somebody else comes in. I think a quarterback comes in. I can't remember who it was. But Cam is talking to the coach. And I can't remember if it was Hardegree or if it was Holes or if it was Callahan, but he's talking to somebody in between the two plays. He comes right back in. And on the very next play, and the only part of the reason I noticed this is that he's not looking at me, but I'm in line with his receiver. And so he's staring what looks to be right at me, so I can see his eyes. And he is drawing the backers out of the middle of the field. He is making sure the corner is taking the eye bait, for whatever term I'm using here, on an out route. He holds them for an extra beat, immediately turns and pumps one into Xavier Restrepo on the seam for about a 16, 18-yard gain. And what I saw in that moment was exactly what Bo Hardegree is talking about, which is I made a mistake. It cost my team. My coach told me, here's what you got to do. I came out the next play and I did the thing right. And it's just a play in practice. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but it illustrates the process. Yeah. And to me, it illustrated Cam fixing something in real time in 2 plays, or in this case, in his reps, the very next play, did the right thing. And then yesterday I saw a comment from him after practice saying, I've got to use my eyes to move the backers, is the phrase he used yesterday.
Yeah. And also to add, Cody Barton talked about what you're talking about. If he's like, there have been times in practice where Cam has thrown where he wasn't looking, or has looked somewhere and tricked me into thinking he was going to throw there. And that's a thing that, we talk about Patrick Mahomes and Matthew Stafford doing that. It's not like a true no-look pass yet. Cam is not that far into his development, but he's doing it. He is doing things that are making linebackers notice, oh, he can trick me.
Well, so I also think there's a difference between moving defensive players with your eyes and throwing a no-look pass.
Yeah.
Because Mahomes, and I just remember this because I actually covered it when he was at Texas Tech, Patrick Mahomes was throwing no-look passes in spring practice before he started for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So, Mahomes is on a different planet.
It's a different thing.
He's on a different planet. But I thought that was the most important play of the 2 days I saw, because the deep touchdown pass to Ridley was awesome. There was a couple of nice other throws on Tuesday in particular over the middle. We talked about this. I think he's great over the middle. I know Kaharski's written about that now on the website. I think he's very comfortable there. The ball is a tighter spiral because every pass he throws has a little wobble to it, except for the ones that he gears up and throws over the middle, which are real tight. I thought it was the most important play that I saw from him in the 2 days. Now, you might have a different one or a different one on Thursday. So I just thought.
Yeah, I'll be really brief because I do want to talk about some other stuff on the roster. We've got 45 minutes on Cam at this point. But the most telling play was on Wednesday to me. And it is a play where he did not even throw the ball. It is a play where he had to scramble and he's running down the sideline and he knows he can't get hit. And he knows that the play is over and that the coaches have stopped watching. And yet he still tries to juke somebody and then laterals the ball to Tony Pollard down the sideline and lets Pollard pick up a first down. He is so loose. That is the biggest compliment I will give him, is that this moment is not too gigantic for him. Like
none of it.
This is not a guy who is tight. He is joking around and lateraling balls in the open field in a scramble drill in practice on a busted 3rd and 6, because he's like, we got to get the first down. He's so competitive, but so loose about it. That was the most telling thing I saw. Personality-wise, mentality-wise, much more than the individual skills and the individual throws. The fact that this guy's willing to do stuff like that in practice and just kind of throw caution to the wind.
It's going to be fun to cover.
Is incredibly telling to his mentality about football.
One way or the other, it'll be fun to cover. Basically, imagine a triple option to the left out of like the gun after a couple of seconds in the pocket. That's what that play was. No, I look again. If I'm a Titans fan, I am nothing but excited about all the things we've seen. off the field, on the field, etc. Again, it does not mean they're going to win more games or that he's going to be an elite player or that he's going to throw a bunch of touchdowns, but it's all good stuff so far. So, okay, I know you Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, two great sponsors. I know you wanted to talk about the defense. First of all, Gunnar Helm, consistently good across the board from tight ends coach Luke Stocker, flashed every day.
Yep.
I saw him play. I think he is going to be the pass catching tight end in this offense. I think he's the starting pass catching tight end. I've loved Gunnar Helm since all the days at Texas. And you know the thing that stood out to me watching him at practice, and I was thinking about this, there is an advantage to playing at places like Texas. He's been playing against pretty high quality defensive players for most of his career at Texas in a very high level offense at Texas, and it's not too big for him either. Now, he makes mistakes. He makes rookie mistakes, and he's going to get better, and I don't think he's a great inline blocker, but I think he's going to catch passes in this offense.
Yeah, if we're briefly talking about roster predictions, how they handle the tight end group is going to be really fascinating this year. I think that there will probably be, whether you want to call it a correction or an overcorrection, a correction toward keeping more core special teamers on the roster and fewer guys who are theoretical offensive and defensive contributors. And that might mean devaluing how many tight ends you keep around this year. I think it is possible that the Titans only carry 3 tight ends into this season. And if 2 of them are Chig and Helm, that might mean Odakoya has to be the next one because he is the one who has the blocking expertise over Wiley and David Martin Robinson. So let's just remember that you kind of do need to have a blocking tight end. So that dynamic is going to be interesting. But yeah, defense. When we're talking about roster,
one comment. I think Coach Will said it, and I think you said it, and I was going to say it too. I do think Josh Wiley is the one who appears to be maybe not have a spot because you can't have 3 tight ends that all do the same thing. So
you can do is use trade leverage when you have 3 of the same thing. I don't know if it's for a draft pick. It could more likely be for a player. I would not be shocked if that is the MO of this new regime, which is swap need for need with teams that get needy during training camp.
Don't you think it's Chig that has more value, though?
Somebody would have value, but the question isn't about value. The question's about need. So if you think of the example of there are always teams that have injuries in training camp. And if the Titans have 3 positions that I could identify right now of, you could use another veteran to compete in a rotation.
Sure.
And you don't need another veteran to compete in the rotation at tight end. That's where you just say, hey, I've got a rotational piece. You've got a rotational piece. Let's swap rotational pieces.
All right. Defense. Making progress, question mark?
I'm going to say I'm a little bit concerned, you guys. I am a little bit concerned. I think they need help in the secondary, especially at cornerback. I think they need help off the edge. And I think they need help at inside linebacker. So essentially, I am just saying I like the defensive tackles and I like the safeties.
I like one linebacker.
All of this hinges on whether L'Jarius Sneed is 2023 L'Jarius Sneed. Well, first it hinges on, is L'Jarius Sneed a football player? Like
does he exist?
It does it does kind of hinge on, can he practice and can he play? But if you think about what we saw from this defense this week, the reports are going to be interesting because you hear Wednesday the defense won and Thursday the defense won. Well, Wednesday was a day that was entirely predicated on 3rd and long drills. The defense should win 3rd and long. And Thursday was a day that was entirely predicated on red zone drills. And when you don't have pads on and you can't run the ball, the defense should always win those. So kind of a stacked deck there. And when we're deciding who wins and loses practices, we're almost exclusively talking about team and 7-on-7 periods. We're not talking about like drills that show you depth and competition and stuff. I am not saying there is not talent at all of these levels. But how many times this week did we say, oh man, that was a great play. Who was in coverage? oh, it was Jarvis Brownlee. That was a great play for a receiver against Jarvis Brownlee. And we're having this big tour of, oh, he's going to be the one that makes this jump. And maybe he does. But yesterday, the big play of the day, Titans tweeted it out. You can see the video. The big play of the day is Will Levis throwing a bomb to Bryce Oliver with Brownlee and Amani Hooker in coverage over the top. And I'm not saying these guys aren't talented. And I'm not saying these guys won't play better in games than they do in practice. But the coverage was suspect this week. And McCreary was very limited. And Snead wasn't out there. And Daryl Baker isn't out there. And Kevin Winston isn't out there. And like, there are reasons to think the secondary could be better. But there are also reasons to think this team needs a veteran in the secondary. You just need somebody to go out and get. And then off the edge, you have a bunch of guys who are not known for sacking the quarterback. I looked this up. I believe, and this is not what he does, so I'm not insulting Lorenzo Carter, but I believe last year out of 122 eligible edge rushers, Lorenzo Carter ranked like 119th in pass rush win rate.
Super.
And last place on that list was Jalen Harrell. So like, where is the depth? You have three guys in Arden Key, who he's going to get you 6 or 7 sacks. That is what he is, and that's not a problem. You have Draymond Jones, who's never really been asked to be a primary 1A edge rusher. You have Femi Oladejo, who is a rookie who has played the position for about 10 months of his life.
I think we'll be a good player eventually.
We can develop into that, but it's that thing we've talked about of the 6-6-10 phenomenon. If you get 6 sacks 1 year, 6 sacks 1 year, and 10 sacks the third year, you could have just gone and gotten a guy who gets 10 sacks that first year. The development, if you're developing into the skill that other people already have, what's the point in development? All of that is to add up. Where you haven't also talked about inside linebacker, which we all know is a competition, and we can also talk about the limitations. I don't know if this is being talked about. Otis Reese barely practiced in minicamp because he's still dealing with an ankle injury. I don't know if we've mentioned that of why he's not in the competition, but he's still here. And James Williams is developing, and Cedric Gray is developing, and you have Bernie and Orgy and Jacobs and Gabenda and all of these names. The team still is open to adding a will linebacker to play alongside Barton. I've asked a bunch of people, why not just play a 5-1-5? Like, why not have a base dime? And they're like, oh, that's really hard to sustain for a whole season. Like, you're asking 5 defensive linemen to be out there for the whole season. That's really, really difficult. But
and teams will attack that very quickly, like.
Yeah. So it's I'm not trying to raise alarm. I just think this has gone under discussed because we're going to spend 45 minutes of a 60-minute show talking about Cam Ward, and that's what you should do. But we do need to mention that the defense has like some serious questions heading into training camp that need to be rectified in some capacity.
All right. So next week we'll do nothing but roster development, positions, analysis of each position group, defense, etc.
No, because I want people to watch the show.
We did not. We did not give it a. Here's the thing, though, and I'm not saying who is in what order here, so I'm not trying to give away anything that is illegal. But if you are talking about the cornerbacks that practice this week on the team, I think you are talking about 2 UDFAs, a waiver wire ad, a 5th and a 6th rounder. I think that's what you got. That was practicing in most of the like prominent cornerback roles.
3 UDFAs.
3 UDFAs.
Because I think you're forgetting one from last year.
Maybe I am.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm counting 3 name guy from last year.
Okay. Are you?
Yes.
Then I will say there was another one who did on Thursday when you weren't here.
3 UDFAs, a waiver wire ad, a 5th and a 6th round pick. That is what they have at corner right now. That does not include, of course, McCreary or Snead. And the other inside linebacker role next to Cody Barton is kind of the same list of acquisition. It's a little different at edge, but not by much. And so I agree. I agree. And there's a lot of talk about the depth along the offensive line. There's a lot of positive praise from the coaching staff, Callahan in particular, about Dan Moore, about Kevin Zeitler, about Corey Levin. You talked to Cushenberry about this as well. I think there's reasons for optimism around that group, but I am concerned with the depth. So
I'm a little less concerned about offensive line depth, if I am being honest.
Than the defense?
Yeah, I think that offensive line depth.
Okay.
look, it's not Philadelphia, but you have a depth in place that, let's talk about who linemen 6 through 10 are in theory right now. Blake Hance, Corey Levin, Sam Mustipher, Jackson Slater, and then your choice between John Ojukwu and Jalen Duncan. Last year, Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu are OL 6. And now you've got him at 10. That is...
So they're not the
depth.
swing tackle. They're not the swing tackle.
I would imagine that you need to keep either Ojukwu or Duncan or Crenshaw Dixon or Oli Udu as an extra swing tackle in case Blake Hance can't be the swing tackle and the swing interior.
Right.
But right now, if you guys go check out my projected 53, it's up on the Tennessee, and I have Ojukwu being the one that makes it as that 9th offensive lineman. But yeah, I'm not sitting here saying it's perfect, but I'm saying that on my list of concerns with this team, offensive line depth is relatively lower. Good one.
Eddie says you're listing AI generated names and telling me not to worry about the offensive line.
I'm listing guys who have started in the National Football League.
Mustipher, that's not a human. That's
Sam
not a human.
Mustipher has started for like 3 full seasons in the National Football League.
I know.
That is a different thing than being like, oh, I guess some guy, Isaiah Prince, that hasn't played football in 2 years is going to start at left tackle
I
this
hear
week.
you.
Like, there are fundamental differences here. But offensive line, top end, still going to be a little concerned until I see it. Depth, I'm less. If I'm ranking Titans concerns, how good is Dan Moore? Very high on my list of concerns. How good is the offensive line depth? Less so. Not saying it's not a concern, but given his track record of, never missing a snap in college or the pros, he does tend to play. So less concerned about that. Latham didn't get hurt last year. Skoronski has been relatively healthy throughout his pro career. Zeitler's been relatively healthy throughout his pro career. Cushenberry's the one who's been less healthy, but that's why you keep Corey Levin and Sam Mustipher, 2 guys with starting experience at center in the NFL.
And I think Slater is going to get a lot of reps as he develops at that position as well. All right, well, make sure you go to Sinkers Beverages this weekend. Buy your dad something nice. And, of course, you got Shotgun Boys Barbecue open 11 to 3 Wednesday through Sunday. Quick snapshot on the receiver battle, says Jason. Look, we're going to spend a lot of time on this kind of stuff over the course of the summer, but right now, I think 6 spots are locked in.
Who's your
one
6?
of those? One of those is what do they do with Burks? If Treylon Burks is on the team versus traded versus do they cut bait? I don't know, but I think there's like 6 other guys for like 1 spot. Maybe it's like 2 or 3 guys for 1 spot. I think we've talked about this. I do think they're deeper at that position than I can remember covering this team. Seeing Tyler Lockett out there is good. I think we're going to really enjoy getting to know Tyler Lockett, by the way. I'm really interested in getting to know like his personality type. Very sort of thoughtful dude. I think it's going to be interesting there. But I think the 2 rookies, I think the 3 veterans, and Treylon Burks, I think it's pretty clear those 6 are the top 6. The question is, what is Burks' role for this team moving forward? And I have not looked at your starting 53, but
I will say if it's 7 right now, Oliver has a lead over Restrepo.
I think that's probably. I think Oliver does a lot more, and he's done a lot more for this team already.
Yeah. So if it is 7, you have to ask the question: is Burks on PUP or is Burks on the active roster, or has Burks been traded?
Yeah, exactly. Not knowing fully healthy, I think he's number 6, but we'll see what happens there. I do think Oliver's interesting, and we've talked about this before. Like when you show flashes in camp, then you make the practice squad, and then when you are given an opportunity in a game and you show flashes in a game, generally speaking, that's the trajectory a coach wants to see from a player. So I think Oliver, his trajectory is sort of on the path to making the active 53.
I know people are interested in this stuff, so I will tell you some classic Sus was eavesdropping information.
Ooh, nice.
Sus was eavesdropping. I believe Bryce Oliver is on Corey Levin's team, and Morgan Cox's team. And I believe Morgan Cox's team had a 1-point lead heading into the final day of summer spring competition. So Bryce Oliver's 3-touchdown day in practice yesterday very well might have made it so that Morgan Cox's team is in the lead heading into the summer break. If you guys care about the Callahan competition, that is some That is some exclusive eavesdropping
There
from
we
Nick
go.
Suss.
Here we go. I do love that Cam Ward's like, well, I threw an interception. I'm just glad it's Barton because he's on my team, plus 6 points.
Yeah,
so, like,
not
they're paying attention to this stuff for sure.
not for nothing. There is speculation about the intent of that interception.
Oh, more nuggets.
And
when you
Cam,
roll,
so if Cam will never admit it, there's no way of knowing.
when you roll, and the play's kind of over, and it's probably a sack, and it's just throwaway, and your teammate's standing right there in the end zone. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying, look, if the point system is devised such that it is +6 for a defender to get an interception, but it is not -6 for a quarterback to throw an interception, and you have the incentive to gain points by throwing that is a way to Coach Will saying cooking the books.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
I'm not a conspiratorial person. I am not trying to throw things into the ether. But if you can gain points by making a mistake that isn't offset, it's gamesmanship.
Well, it would. This puts a perfect bow on the Cam Ward conversation. That rolling to the right in the middle of a play, Cam Ward could process the math on a totally separate and isolated, fabricated point system that his coach has made up for competition in the summer.
Yeah, Eddie, I am not accusing him of points shaving. I am just, again, I'll be that jerk that's like, I'm just starting a conversation.
It's not point shaving. It's point inducing. I don't know what it's the opposite.
It's job creation. If we're talking about it, this is a job creator.
He's a job creator. But by the way, the competition continues into the fall, right? Like it's going to continue.
Yeah, the competition is not over. I think there is like a midpoint reward or something. Yeah, but maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. But yes.
All right, gotta go.
Yeah, let's stop talking.
Tennessean.com. Make sure you sign up for good journalism. Tennessean.com. Go read all of Nick's stuff as well, and go call your dad. All right. Just call your dad this weekend. Just please do that. For Nick Suss, I'm Braden Gall, Seekers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Thank you to all of you in the comments. You guys are awesome and wonderful all the time. Do appreciate your contributions each and every show. PK and I are back on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy Father's Day. U.S. Open Golf. Enjoy yourselves. We'll talk to you next time. Peace and love.